Hi, I'm Jerry Hyde, Youth Services Manager at the Ames Public Library. Welcome to Well Read, a program about a little bit of this and a little bit of that at your Ames Public Library. Today we are focusing on award-winning books in the children's realm. In January, it's kind of like the movie Perfect Things Awards, Academy Awards for our books, and this year was no different. But there were some trends that we saw. Our fantasies grew a little bit darker. Our characters were somewhat more developed, and with lies versus storytelling. We also broached a little bit into the diversity of our world and how we can be accepting and welcoming to everyone in our society. In addition to that, our awards kind of went with some of the biographies and about people. So characterization is, again, very important throughout the whole realm of what happened in 2014. So with me today, I've brought in some of our youth service experts. We have Miss Danielle and Miss Mary Jen and Miss Anastasia. And we all have our own little parts of the youth services world that we like to read, but we also are very well balanced in what we have read. So we're going to start out today with our oldest award that is available or has given every year in January, our John Newbery Award winning. And now this happens to be an award that's given for literary merit for our juvenile fiction and YA fiction for the literature, not illustrations, but the literature part. And this year's John Newbery Medal winner is The Crossover. And The Crossover is a wonderful story about a young man and his brother. Yep. and basketball. So who would like to give a little bit more in-depth reason why this won our John Newbery Award?
Well, first of all, people can say it's about basketball, and kids who love sports are going to really connect to that part. I am not a sports player. You look at me, you don't think sports, I'm pretty sure. But I read it and I loved it so much. The character, again, with the characterization, these two brothers, it's about these two boys. They're 14 years old. They're young. They're twins, and they've always been together. They've always been each other's favorite person. And they're starting to grow up, and one is really trying to separate. He gets a girlfriend, and then the other one is by himself trying to figure out what to do. So,
but there's also other things that are going on.
Oh, so many things.
Very serious things that are going on with his father.
Yeah, there's some illness there.
But what I also liked as well is how the book is set up in the chapters, and I have one place marked where he starts about the basketball rules, number one, and throughout the book, and then our first quarter, and then he goes into the first quarter of what the story is all about, and introducing the two brothers.
And I think one of the really cool things about this this particular novel in verse, which I think not a lot of other ones do, is it wasn't just the poetry that made it so poetic, but it was also the way that Kwame Alexander used fonts in this to sort of really emphasize
really cool.
Different ways, and like there are a lot of sort of onomatopoeia words that are sort of like zow, bam, and font size, and it was...
Some words have larger letters in the middle and then smaller letters on either side. I mean, it's it kind of jumps off the page.
Yeah, and it's sort of, it adds a bit more rhythm to the poems than just the straight text would, which I thought was really cool.
The parts I read about it, I could, like my little bit of sports that I have when I was way, way long ago, playing basketball with the rhythm of the dribbling the ball.
Yeah.
And in my day, you dribbled twice and then you passed the ball.
Oh,
and
right,
so
yeah.
I could dribble twice and pass the ball in the story. And very powerful.
I'm going to say one more thing about that. Part of the awards thing is we all try to predict them all year long.
Yes.
And Tanvi predicted this one. Last summer, she said, this is it. This is the excellent book. This is the most excellent book. And I remember in November her holding it and saying, this is the one. So I want to give her props for calling it.
Well, let's
Definitely.
transition into the next one, though, an honor book,
Wheel.
because now this is the one I predicted for
Me too.
the Newbery Award.
Yes,
It got a Newbery honor,
Yes.
so with it very wonderful. So it didn't go left unnoticed at all.
Yep.
And again, it's in that verse,
Yeah.
and a wonderful story. Who would like to share about what the story's? Mary Jen.
This is a story about Jacqueline Woodson, an author, very prolific author, and this is a story about her growing up and sort of bridging multiple worlds, actually, sort of bridging the worlds of civil rights era and moving past the civil rights era, also bridging like living in the North and living in the South, living with her mom, living with her dad. And there's just a lot of really wonderful moments in her life where she's sort of seeing that very complicated world from, I think she's maybe 12 years old, like 12-year-old eyes, and just does a really great way of observing the world. And again, a novel in verse, beautiful, beautiful poetry, and just a very moving book that I think a lot of people would be able to relate to this book because of the various different experiences that she has in her life.
Yeah, it's especially kids that are thinking about being writers. That is
Yes.
a big focus of her, because it is very autobiographical to her life. And she was not a reader when she was a young girl. And so it's good to get that perspective too. And it talks about when she gets her first blank notebook and she can't even write, and how magical it is when she can write her name, and just how that develops and how she finds the words, and she finds the words to share with her family. And the one you were just showing was when I tell my family that I've decided I'm going to be a writer. But also just very much a novel of family and time spent with her grandma and grandpa and on the porch and in the garden. And so a lot of big thoughts and a lot of everyday activities too.
And some of the struggles that she has being Black or being African American in a time that the world was struggling with that, which is a nice jumping point to, I'm going to jump away from the Newbery Award, and because this one, another trend in the award giving was that many of the same titles were highlighted and or honored in different other awards, and this one also won the Coretta Scott King Award. And so we have others that are in there. So Crossover was another one that so they both won the Newbery and the Coretta Scott King Award. We also have How I Discovered Poetry, which I have here now. I'll kind of highlight a piece later at closing, but who would like to share another novel that is in verse, only in little poetry pieces?
This is the year of the different formats. So this one is also autobiographical. For some reason, I can never say that word.
We know what you mean.
But it's written about a young African-American girl who grew up to be a poet and a writer, Marilyn Nelson. And I believe she wrote it, her dad was one of the first African-American officers in the Army. And so she writes it about growing up in that situation, in being an Army brat. And really not only being different because of that, but being different because, there weren't very many other African-American kids. And it's good too.
So another book that won an honor book was How It Went Down. So we're going to jump back to finish our Newbery winners. And again, this is a very unique one as well, El Delfo, and by Cece Bell. And this one is not necessarily, it's diverse in the way that it's about a handicap that a person has. And it's very unique in the fact that it's a graphic novel. And Danielle, I think I want you to talk about this a little bit.
This one maybe was my favorite book that got chosen this year. I remember reading it and just thinking, wow, She did a great job. This is another autobiographical book. This is by an author and illustrator named Cece Bell. And when Cece was 4 years old, she got meningitis and no longer could hear. And it's about her growing up in the 1970s with no hearing, without being able to hear. And she was also mainstreamed almost immediately because she lived in a small town. So it's about her growing up, and she develops this superhero character for herself, and she calls it El Defo. And her superpower is that she gives her teachers this high-powered hearing aid thing to wear around their neck. And so she can hear them anywhere in the building. She can, and it's in the 1970s, so she can hear them maybe taking a smoke break. She can hear them telling the principal that, oh, she's so happy to not be in the classroom any longer. And in her favorite part, as she's like a 7 or 8 year old, 9-year-old kid, she can hear her teacher going to the bathroom.
Which is very important. I mean, a very cool thing to do.
So it's great because it shows this this little girl growing up, and it's also not just about her being deaf. It's about her struggling with making friendships, which everyone has those struggles. And you know, some people have been a little confused by the fact that a graphic novel has gotten the award for text, but I think the committee did a great job. She has some really funny turns of phrase in there. I also really like the fact that she made it into a rabbit.
Yeah.
Because,
Yes,
you know,
with the big
ears, hearing is so important for rabbits.
Yeah. Well, and then when she's mainstream, she finds that that she's not totally by herself either, that she can also be a part of a group that also have big ears and the hearing packs or things in their ears. And I found, what I look for in stories too is how it transforms or transfers across the board. So I know there are some important issues in there, that is a more juvenile fiction and older, but I can see adults reading this too, and especially adults that are losing their hearing. I mean, one could identify with the character even though they're losing their hearing at a younger age than when you're older, but it kind of explains things. I mean, it was just overall just a wonderful, a 360 type of understanding of this particular handicap. So,
and I think for people who are looking for Smile and Sister read-alikes, I think it's a really great read-alike. So when Raina Telgemeier stops writing books, kids can start reading this one instead.
Well, she doesn't write them fast enough.
Well, so no, that is very true.
You gotta fill this in between.
So now that everyone's read her new one, they can start reading.
They can read that. Well, we've talked about a graphic novel, and a graphic novel's got a lot of illustrations and and panels of words as well. One of our Caldecott, you talked about this being a Newbery Award winning and having so many illustrations. We also have a graphic novel that was a Caldecott Award winner, just with our beautiful, I have my deep purpley blue illustrations in graphic novel form. So this one, Summer, is a very interesting story too. Who would like to share their opinions about it?
I can start.
Sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. The storyline is very straightforward. It's about a girl and her parents who go to the beach in Canada, actually, so it's kind of a cold beach. And she meets up with her friend that's always been her friend at the beach. And they start to get to know the kids in the village, and then the main character's parents are fighting and she's not quite sure why. And over the course of the story, a lot of the mysteries get worked out and they learn a lot of things. But the girls are just talking about things and trying to figure things out, just like any middle grade novel. And what really makes it stand out is the illustrations. They are absolutely fabulous, and there are multiple pages where you would not know what was going on from the text. Like, you have to look at the pictures and look closely. Like, they have this habit of watching horror movies. And one night, there's a picture of a girl lying on the couch, looking up, and you can see the computer light blinking. And that's, so you can figure out that she's lying there, she's scared because they just watched this horror movie. They watched it on the laptop is still up there, the laptop is reminding her of the horror movie, and you get all that from one picture. And that's not the only one that has just very evocative pictures. So.
Yeah, and I think that this duo, these cousins, did such a great job of working together, and I think that both the illustrations are so realistic to, you know, kids who are this age. They just look so real, and then on the other hand, the dialogue that they have is also so genuine. It's so authentic, and it's you really get the idea of these kids who are growing up and learning about adult things, but don't really have the language to necessarily express it, and you know, sort of having these adult conversations with their stunted language that they have, and they did such a great job of illustrating that it's just, it's a beautiful portrait of these two kids coming of age, and it was just, I thought it was really powerful. It was, this one I think was probably my favorite graphic novel of the year, like hands down.
Well, and it was many people's favorite graphic novel of the year, because not only now the Caldecott is for a picture book format in honor of a Randolph Caldecott, an illustrator back in the 19th century, but this is a graphic novel that really the target audience is young adults. And so thus it also won a Prince honor book as well. So, and Prince, Michael Prince was a library media specialist in Kansas City at a high school, who in 1997 the YALSA, the Young Adult Library Service Group, decided to honor him with an award in his honor. Talking about the best young adult books or best teen books, and so this was definitely one of their favorites as well. So
that one got a Caldecott honor and a Prince honor, right?
Right.
I had forgotten.
First time ever.
Yeah.
First time ever, and I think, you know, I thought about Hugo.
Hugo Cabret,
that how controversial that was, but. And it was a juvenile audience, not a young adult audience. And this was a young adult novel that has a graphic novel that has a Caldecott honor. So very interesting types of. I would have loved to have been around the table discussing that. Wouldn't that have been fabulous?
Yes,
there's been some interesting conversations amongst librarians, but it's well deserved.
Well, and I. Was fortunate enough to be at ALA at the winter conference when they announced all the awards, and everybody stood up and screamed when this one was as a Caldecott, and they were very happy with the Prince as well. But as a Caldecott, because this is, you know, history-changing type of decisions that have been made by our committee. So let's go ahead and talk about the Prince Awards then, and our Prince Award winner is I'll Give You the Sun.
And this was yours.
And
this was
Mary Jen is her favorite.
Favorite book, my favorite young adult book of the year. This is just such a phenomenal piece of work by Jan D. Nelson, and she did a really wonderful job of, again, another twin story like The Crossing, but it was The Crossover. But it's a story about these twins who are, you know, the same, like very extremely close, can finish each other's thoughts and sentences and feelings and stuff like that, up until they reach 13. And then when they're 13, something happens, or a series of somethings happen. And they go for like 3 years without really speaking to each other. And what makes the story really great is she tells the story from both of their perspectives, but at two different time periods. So we hear Noah's side of the story when he's 13, and we hear Jude's side of the story when she's 16. And sort of slowly the plots start weaving together, and you get a more full picture of exactly what happened, and they both know one side of the story, but nobody knows the whole picture. And so not only that, just the way that she's approached it, but her writing is just beautiful. Like, so many of her sentences are just so beautifully crafted that you can really tell that she is a really gifted writer, and that she did a really fantastic job of not only making a really interesting plot, but also crafting it really well. And it's such a wonderful book.
And I really have appreciated how you have made it very intriguing for our audience to, you have to come and read it and see how what's weaving together that's making it an interesting story. And then again, the beauty of her putting the words together. The power of the word is very, very important. So this was our winner. This one, Summer, was an honor. We also have And We Stay, right here, right here. So And We Stay, as by Jenny Hubbard. Anyone like this one? Go ahead.
I read that one. It was good. It was really good. It's a wonderful story about a girl whose life crashed down around her, and she's trying to rebuild it. She went to boarding school to rebuild it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I don't want to say anymore because I want people to read it.
Another one that you should come and check out and find out what happened, so you can see why it won
world,
the award and why Miss Danielle really.
Her world did crash, like in a split second in the school library. Everything changed.
Everything
for her.
happens in the school library. Yeah, I mean it did when I was a child too. So. How about Grasshopper Jungle? I know we discussed this in our award winning, so we'll just touch base with it. Or not our award, but our regular Best Books show. So Grasshopper Jungle, what do you think? Everybody should read it, come in and check it out.
I haven't read it, but I will speak on behalf of Tanvi, our teen librarian, who said that this was her favorite book of the year. It does take place in Iowa, for people who are looking for a little local connection. It's a little futuristic fantasy-esque with, I think, they are human-eating grasshoppers, 6 foot tall, like maybe something like that. But anyway, she loves it. It's supposed to be a really fantastic book.
And then the last one was Carnival at Bray, which is right here too. So, which also won the Morris Award that we'll talk about in a little bit. Because I would like to go back. It seems like we've gone to both ends of the spectrum here as far as age is concerned. But I do want to address some of our picture books that we have, and we haven't touched base on that. And our award winner, the Caldecott, is The Adventure of Beekle, and in this is wonderful illustrations of the use of light and shadow and scale and
imagination.
Lots of imagination.
We've got our beautiful darkness and the light, but Beekle is an imaginary friend waiting for his human friend. And then they do meet. We'll tell the end of this. They do meet, but they don't know what to do, as like many friends don't when they first.
Yeah, it takes them a while to make a connection. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to say about this book is I took this to the kids I babysit for, and I took a whole stack of the award winners, and they pulled this out, like both of them. Read this one first. Like they really, really identified with it, and they had no trouble. I had a little trouble with, is this imaginary? Is this real? Or now are they real and going to be imaginary? And they were just like, oh yeah. Then they're going there, and oh yeah. So it really related to the kids. That sometimes I think, oh, they're very distinguished, and we appreciate they're distinguished. This one, like the kids,
really
love.
And what I went through it, and what I loved is, so the day of the Caldecott, which, like you were saying, one of my favorite days of the year, Oscar Day for librarians, I tracked this book down, and I'm like, I've got to look at it again. And I just looked at it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. This is why. And plus, there's all sorts of great little allusions to other classic children's literature. If you look at Beekle's Crown, if you remember, one of the favorite books of all time is Where the Wild Things Are. So that looks a lot like Max's Crown.
And he takes that wild trip too.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like Max did. Where'd it go?
Yeah.
And he
It's
gets
in
in a
here
boat.
somewhere. And just like Max did. So there are, that's right. That's a good point. So very awesome book. The honors, there were a grand amount of honors. There was 6 of them, and again, one of those being the graphic novel for teens. And then, but this one gave me somewhat comfort of a regular picture book. That, and also, Nana in the City. You can't go wrong with your grandmother, and what a wonderful job that grandmother does, helping alleviate the fears of being in the big city where she lives by, you can solve lots of things by giving a red cape or a cape to people. And I think we'll see a lot of this book this summer, or at least
yes.
every hero has a story. So Nana has a story in this book. How about the Noisy Paint Box, another Caldecott honor. Go ahead.
I read it, and it's about Kandinsky, and he is an artist, an abstract artist. And what's interesting is it talks about how he saw colors and heard sounds when he saw colors.
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia, and so that talks about this, how like when he grew up, when he saw yellow, he saw a certain sound, and that's one of the reasons he painted the way that he did.
And see, and I love the way the illustrations show that he's hearing the colors. And he was also another way of being accepted for who you are. He wasn't accepted for who he was until later in life, because he became what his parents wanted him to be and what society wanted him to be, but those colors kept talking to him, and his paint box kept talking to him, and so he finally went back and then became the person he really wanted to be. And that is so very, very important for each and every one of us, whether we're a little kid or we're an adult. So.
And another biography.
And another biography. This one isn't a biography, but we'll jump to a biography in a minute. This is Sam and Dave Dig a Hole by Mac Barnett, and John Clausen is the illustrator. And we've seen both of those guys in many of our picture books. So Sam and Dave, this is kind of how I feel sometimes, that you dig a hole, and you keep digging, and then you make a decision. And oftentimes when you make the decision, you've just missed the boat, and the gems are other places, and then they take a left or a right and miss it. But in the end, life is wonderful because of the dog, who does find what he's looking for too. But the whole story is a very interesting story.
I love this page because you can talk, the next one, about how there's not actually more than 2 kids. It's just the 2 kids falling.
Yeah.
So just the picture book conventions that Clausen uses in here are amazing.
Yes.
And how looking at details rewards you. If you look at this page, you can see it's not actually the same place they started. And so, the kids had a lot of fun finding the differences and talking about, well, where are they really? Or did the house change while they were gone?
How long were
did
they
have
gone?
did they have a dream? Did they go to China? What would happen if we dug a hole?
So lots of questions are asked.
Discussion for that.
Sometimes they're answered.
And sometimes not.
And sometimes not. So Sam and Dave dig a hole. I totally understand. I love the way he uses the brown tones and the, it's not a very colorful book, but it is a colorful book.
Yes.
It's very effective.
We've got 2 more
color.
Caldecotts that this is Viva, and this one is another very distinct way of doing illustrations with the stop motion puppetry and the collage types of things. But this is also a biography of another artist, and in the back, what I love about the picture books, they always have just a little bit of a bio or information about the author or the person that it's about. But this one is done in both Spanish and English, which is a very cool way of doing things.
So it is photography. So it won for photography because we've been waiting for that.
Yep. So it was
For
like
a Caldecott to win for photography.
she put it together and then took pictures.
Well, the photographer is a different
someone
person.
else.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's they called it stop motion.
So who
in
won it?
printmaking.
Like who did they give the award
I think
to?
they gave it to her. I think
Well,
they
I
gave
happen
it
to have it right here. Let's see what I have right here. Illustrated by Yuli Morales, and
'Cause I
written by
think-
the same person.
I think
So,
they figured she put it all together.
Okay.
And like then someone just took
Yeah,
the
took the-
pictures. But
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a very fascinating.
And it's one of those books that when you read it and you look at it and you read a little bit about the artist and the end, you want to go out and find and look to see
Yeah.
what she was drawing and what kind of artist she was. So a very interesting book, challenging you to go on. It was also the
Per Belpre
award
for illustration.
for
right?
illustrations. Yes, and so it was a double award winner as well. And then I believe we are going to have to end on this one, The Right Word by Roger and his thesaurus. So this one not only was a Caldecott honor, but also a Siebert Award winner, which is a book of information. So who would like to speak to this? This has got lots of information in it.
This
Lots
is
of words.
This is another beautiful biography, and it's all about Peter Roget, who was obsessed with words and would collect lists of words. And I think what's so interesting about this book is Melissa Sweets making the collection of words such a graphic
Like that.
element.
Like that page right there that you just read.
The fact that she includes the lists of words, but she also, in the font that she uses, as well as the pictures that are included, the way that she's organized them all has made it very visually appealing, very visually interesting, in the way that Melissa Sweet so often does. But
Yeah.
I think that it was just such a neat combination of the two, the words and the graphic elements of the words. And it's a really interesting story in the fact that he starts writing this thesaurus at the age of 8 and gets it published when he's, is it like 83 or it's
Yeah,
something?
it's
I mean,
older. He's
quite a bit older than when he started it. But it's something that he's sort of worked on his whole life. And still, I mean, at home, we have the Roger thesaurus right on our shelf. And so it's,
It's still
clearly
very important.
The back end papers, they found the actual end papers. They took his handwritten lists and even further,
One more.
like photo facsimile
Oh,
them.
sorry.
So you can see his actual handwriting and how he had set them up all together. I mean, that's not all the words, but it's a really good, to me, that I really loved seeing exactly how he had written them out. And I just want to call out the publisher is Erdman's Books for Young Readers, and they've been very well represented with the informational books and the Schneider disability books and the translated books. They won the translated book award this year
wow.
too. So it's a really great time to showcase publishers as well as authors and illustrators.
Yeah, because the publishers actually have all that control
Yeah,
of
what
whether
they
or not it
choose.
gets published or doesn't get
Yeah.
published, and which I kind of fibbed that I'm going to go on with one more award because I think this one we haven't really highlighted very many years, but the Stonewall Award, and we have some really good books this year that have that honor. And one of those, let's see, where did I put those?
I think they're right up on the top shelf there.
Here we go. This Day in June. And this definitely is a book about respect and acceptance and understanding, as we talked about earlier, and as are all the books that are here. But it does speak to our LGBT clientele, people.
Yes.
How would you like to speak? I know this is one of your favorites.
This is
Mary Jen.
definitely one of my favorites. I was so thrilled that a picture book actually won the Stonewall this year. It was sort of surprising to many of us, but it's just such a fantastic book. Number one, it's a fantastic picture book. It's all about a parade. And what kid doesn't love a parade? There are, oh, oh, you're not a kid. But the colorful illustrations and the wonderful excitement that's in all of them, really fun, funny rhymes and couplets that are on each of the pages, and a lot of details to look at. And so this can really just be read as a picture book. And you know, you get it as one of the many in your bag that day, and you go home and you read it right before you go to bed. But also in the back is this fantastic reading guide. Now this is published by the APA, speaking of great publishers, and they have included a reading guide in the back that talks about how to talk about this book with your child, and when to talk about sexuality or different decisions that have been made in a lot of publishing, as well as, you know, a lot of people out there that are just maybe non-conventional. And it talks about how to talk about it with your child who's like 0 to 7, and how to talk about it with 7 to 12, and how to talk about it with teens. And it gives a lot of really great pointers for different kids and where they are. And so for people who want to have this conversation with their children, this is a really wonderful opening into that conversation, not only the book, but also the end matter. And it's just such a fun book.
And really the parade, from what I understand, the Stonewall, I mean, this is where it all began, the Stonewall Award, as well as the parade and celebrating that. The other book that won a Stonewall honor is the little boy,
Morris.
Because I think this one is awesome as well. And again, it's not a throw it in your face, it's just a very nice, subtle, this is life, this is who we are, and we can pretend to wear and have our little dress or be who we are. And that, I think, is what is so important for our books to tell us, is that the acceptance and being able to identify what characters are in the book with ourselves or with someone that we know, and that we can relate with the book and with the people and help us be better people in our world. So I want to thank all of you. I know there are many awards that we haven't touched, and obviously all the books here, including our Theodore Geisel Award, which was You Are Not Small, was the winner. But there's so many wonderful books, whether or not they win the award or not. But it's that interaction that you have with that book, and that how it talks to you. And I have just a piece here that I'd like to end our program with today, and it is How I Discovered Poetry by Marilyn Nelson. And I think it's just how she discovered poetry, but I think each one of us can discover our book or our character that is in our book that speaks to us. And so let me share this one page with you, How I Discovered Poetry. It was like soul kissing, the way the words filled my mouth as Mrs. Purdy read from her desk. All the other kids zoned an hour ahead to 3:15, but Mrs. Purdy and I wandered lonely as clouds borne by a breeze of Mount Parsoness. She must have seen the darkest eyes in the room brim. The next day, she gave me a poem she'd chosen especially for me to read to the all except for me white class. She smiled when she told me to read it, smiled harder, said, "Oh, yes, I could." She smiled harder and harder until I stood and opened my mouth to banjo-playing darkies, pickaninnies, dissies, and dats. When I finished, my classmates stared at the floor. We walked silent to buses, awed by the power of words. Until next time.